Hello, I'm Bill McDonald. Welcome to Center Stage, Charlotte County, and I work for Charlotte County Libraries and History. And our guest is Carrie Walsh, who is not only the director of Charlotte County Human Services, but she's also a talented and experienced singer and musician. And
Thank you.
Carrie, before we get talking about all the wonderful things you're doing in Human Services, if we can kind of explore your musical background a little bit.
That'd be wonderful.
Of course, your father, Steve Blackwell, was known in the county for teaching at Charlotte High School, but he was also had a sterling reputation in the Florida folk community.
Yes.
And he was, of course, singer-songwriter, and he was very skillful at capturing Florida people and Florida places. How was he able to do that in song?
You know, it's a really good question, and I wish that he were here and that he could answer that for you. He fortunately passed away in 2006, but he had a remarkable way of capturing characters, specifically Florida characters, and we are blessed with a lot. He's written songs about Toch Brown and Stetson Kennedy and Arthur Barnhill, who is a local Punta Gorda favorite, Wampus, Wagner. There's an incredible amount of people that he was drawn to, and he loved to tell their story. And he had a remarkable way of bringing people into that. And to this day, it delights me because people still tell me stories about my father. So when I was a kid, I knew that there was something special about him. When I would go to see him after I was done in elementary school, I would walk across the street to Charlotte High School, and I would get to see all of these giant kids who were in high school. And my dad had, there was a Velvet Elvis on the wall, and so I just sort of knew. And the kids seemed joyful and happy, and they genuinely, even when I was that little, would tell me how much they enjoyed him. And for me to be able to then sort of not only be able to get the benefit of having such a wonderful man as a father, but then when he did sort of discover Florida folk music, that was a game changer for all of us in my family. So my father played bass in country western music, bands growing up, and that's what he did on the weekends and that sort of thing. But it was cover music. I mean, wonderful, and he loved to sing harmony and that sort of thing. But we would sing then as a family, where he had an acoustic guitar, and we would just, kind of sing. And I started singing with him when I was about 3.
Sort of like an impromptu.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we would sing and play music. But when I was in high school, in the very, I think it was the early 90s, it may have been late 80s, he and my mother discovered the Florida Folk Festival, and he very specifically was drawn to these wonderful singer-songwriters and loved how they were able to put their love and passion for this state and these people into song, and it just captured him. And ever since then, he was off and running, and it's somehow, just playing covers, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. And so for him, then that songwriting, it was amazing to watch his journey and to watch him bring all these wonderful people to life.
Wow, that's great. Now the group that your father was in, and you also took part in, Steve Blackwell and Friends, and Peace Creek Revival.
Yeah.
Talk about those groups.
Sure. So my brother Jaffe is a saxophone player, and I sing, and I wish that I played instruments. I'm just not particularly good at that, so I'll just stick to singing. But then we have wonderful family and friends that would play with us as well, and so that was Steve Blackwell and Friends, and that was sort of a placeholder name because he was waiting for inspiration on this name, and it always sort of bothered him then that he was kind of in the center of that. He didn't really like that, but he was there with good reason. He held things together. He was just a wonderful center to things. But so we would play and travel around, and we were able to play some local, concerts and things, but then the folk festivals, and then we were able to, for several years, we were able to not only play multiple festivals around the state, but we were able to go to the Philadelphia Folk Festival and travel around a bit doing that. But also then, part of that, and folk music, it's traditional in many, many ways. It's sort of rooted. And he and we were drawn to then gospel music. And so that's where Peace Creek Revival then came. So that was our dear friend Dan Leach and my father and I, and occasionally some others, but usually it was just the three of us, would sing gospel music and spiritual music.
Vocal harmonies.
Yeah, we love to do that, and we just had such a great time doing it. So we had the regular kind of folk music that we played, and then the gospel.
And how did you get started playing folk music, or what drew you to folk music as opposed to other styles of music? Was it your father, obviously?
It was. So he's obviously the biggest musical influence that I have, but growing up there was an awful lot of Bob Dylan in the house, and Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt and Grateful Dead, and there was definitely sort of folk Americana music in the household. And I think for me, folk music is it's very honest. It's people telling their story. It's, it's not pop in the sense that it's not sort of homogenized. It's very much got its flaws, and it's got its kind of its own feeling. And to me, that's very authentic. And I think that's why he was drawn to it. And it's what we gravitate towards. Yeah, it's the story of people.
Sure. And what is, if you can describe a little bit of the Florida folk music community, if there is
Sure.
such a thing.
Oh, there absolutely is such a thing.
I thought there was.
There's a wonderful
Yes.
Florida folk music scene and people, and it's rich with just a loving sense of place and home. It's one of the most supportive environments for people that ever wanted to learn or to try, to learn an instrument or to sing. It's just an incredibly supportive group of people, and they travel to these different festivals, and they know each other, and there's just a love and a bond there. But that sort of environment has people that just they genuinely write songs about this place. And with folk music, oftentimes that's an advocacy.
Right.
So Woody Guthrie, and Stetson Kennedy, and the love that they have for the people in the place, and sort of fighting against when they know that things aren't right. And that's very much alive in the Florida folk community to this day. And they, sing protest songs, and as just right next to a love song, and right next to, songs about this beautiful place and these rivers, and all of that. So it's very much just people sort of representing what they care about very passionately. One of the best things that I think came about out of not only my father, but some of his dear friends that live here locally, like Mike Hamans, is that they started playing music in the park on Thursdays.
The Guitar Army.
Yes, and so the Punta Gorda Guitar Army and Neo Beatnik Revolutionary Ensemble.
Now that I have not heard of.
Yeah,
so I love the name.
Yeah, so they started, and again, it's just that sort of very tender place for people to begin. And my dad was always a teacher through and through, regardless of what he was doing, even when he was playing music. And so helping people to find their own talents and gifts was one of the best things about being around him. And so when I see people, they will either tell me about him as a teacher, or they will tell me about his music and how, boy, because of your dad, I started playing harmonica. Because of your dad, I started playing guitar, and just great, great, great stories.
Now, your musical voice has been described as very melodic and very musical. Do you attribute that to innate talent, musical study?
No study.
in terms of practice or something else?
So, I think that I've been singing for a long time. I started singing, like I mentioned, with him when I was little. And the first time I sang on stage, I was 3, and I sang Babyface. And it's actually a hidden track on one of our CDs.
Oh.
So it's just sort of funny if you hear that. I think for me, I'm sure that I started to notice that it was pleasing to him, to my family, and then I realized how much I enjoyed it. It's an amazing outlet, and I really didn't have much training. I had a few vocal lessons when I was in my teens, but it's not, I don't sing show tunes. I don't sing, that kind of stuff. It's very much folk music, and I don't know, for me, I just feel it,
Sure.
So technically, I may not be doing a lot of things right, but I feel it and I enjoy it.
Very well, yeah. I have to ask you the cliched question. Who
Sure.
were your influences, or what musicians or singers influenced you?
It's variety. So obviously my dad, you can see what a big role he has had in sort of my musical journey and my life. But I would say, I do think probably, Emmylou Harris. I remember hearing the Trio album with Linda Ronstadt and Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris. I remember that being sort of a, wait a minute, kind of a moment for me, is hearing their beautiful voices and singing harmony. And I think that sort of helped me connect the power of harmony. As a teen, it's like I love the Indigo Girls. I am always drawn to people that are sort of putting it out there. Those people that are kind of singing their truths. That's attractive to me in a lot of ways. But Bob Dylan probably is a big one. It's because I paid attention with my father, and now it's more like listening to singer-songwriters to me that are wonderful. So Jason Isbell to me is a current phenomenon to me that I love, and the Wood Brothers and the Punch Brothers. I mean, there's so many, but yeah.
I went to see Emmylou Harris in Columbia, Missouri, and at the end of the performance, she got in her tour bus, and you could go in and visit with her for a couple of minutes, and it was really wonderful that she took the time out to make personal
That's
connection
amazing.
with the fans, rather than I'm this huge star.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to go to my next concert, and you can see me on television or something.
Right. It's amazing. You can feel that difference too, can't you? I mean, it's like she's just such a lovely person through and through, and it just comes out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I've always wanted to ask, in terms of singers, to keep your chops up. What do you singers do in terms of, at home, do you practice scales? Do you sing songs? Or do you just wait till the performances come and then?
No, you can't do that. But I'm a terrible person to ask, because we've just went through the fact that I'm not technically probably a great singer. I don't do all of the sort of the exercises that I should, even though I know about them. For me, it's about sort of endurance, because I do sing kind of with all my heart when I'm singing. And so that can get exhausting. And so working up that ability to sing so when we're singing in concert, that's an hour and a half to 2 hours of me singing, straight. So it's about working up and flexing those muscles. And I have to say, we have not, because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to sing for forever. So I will definitely have to begin that again. But I've had to learn that, I can't always sing or sort of kind of push out as much as I want to in a preservation kind of a mode, like you got to be able to last the whole time. But
to go the distance.
Exactly. But, singing in the car is one of my favorites. My kids, it just drives them crazy. They just are constantly telling me to be quiet. It's like, people do pay money to hear me sing. They're over it.
Now, your current group, Still Friends,
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. Are you guys folk music or eclectic?
Yeah,
or what?
it is eclectic, but it's folk music. It's a little bit more probably sort of jazzy and funky than it was with Still Friends. But my father was sort of the main driver behind a lot of that music, and he wrote a lot of that music. And you do sort of look at, I didn't write any songs while he was living. It's probably one of my greatest regrets is that we never wrote a song together. But after he passed, he's the one who wrote all the songs. And so we just sort of looked around and went, we're going to have to figure this out. And as a result of that, then I started writing more songs. And my friend Tiffany, who is in Still Friends with me, she's just become she's an artist and a songwriter and singer. And so she's just a powerhouse songwriter. So good. And we just sort of kind of muddled through, but the name of it is We're Still Friends, because it's like Steve Blackwell and Friends, and that went away, but we are still friends, so it is, it's kind of a nod to that original group.
And of course, as you mentioned, the pandemic has kind of has put a kibosh on performances, live performances. Are you guys planning anything in the future?
We are planning to get back together. Unfortunately, summer is a rough time for us because Tiffany, that I mentioned, she's a teacher, but she's gone most of the summers to kind of take care of some family stuff.
Yes, I know.
She's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's a fabulous teacher and just a gifted photographer and artist and everything else. And so she's not here during the summer, but so when she gets back here relatively soon, we'll begin to get back together again, and can't wait. And it's funny because, so her son, Reed, who is now, I think Reed is 22, and he went away to college. He played bass and also some lead guitar with us as well for years. Since he was 11, he joined the group. So he played with us. He's a phenomenal musician. He played with us, and then he went away to college, and we went, well, that's great.
Yeah.
Right, now what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
And so I was able to rope my husband into playing bass with us.
Oh.
And he had been playing bass for years, but had never played in front of anyone. Wow. And when
it's a big change.
It's a huge change.
Yes.
And he had incredible bravery there. I mean, just took a deep breath and just went into it, and he's great. So it really is a family band, I mean, we're all together. It's unusual too, because it's not very often in a folk band that you have a saxophone, but we do. Yeah. We do.
So anything coming up in the?
We don't have anything scheduled now because everything's been a little bit crazy. But we do hope to be able to have some concerts booked in the winter, fall, winter, and we just need some time to kind of regroup and get back together again. Yeah.
And we're kind of looking into human services, but sort of a bridge question from you.
Okay.
Having noticed yourself and a number of people who are artistic and creative, they seem to be drawn to social services or human services, whether they become a therapist or a counselor, or they work in social services administration, or they run a nonprofit.
Yeah.
What is it about the helping professions that draw in creative people, do you think?
So it's an interesting question, but I feel, and so I can speak for myself, to me the connection is, and you could say it, we referenced it with folk music, it's that sort of give back. It's that, where you're looking with empathy and where you're feeling and you want to make things right and you want to stand up for what's right. I mean, to me, it's all connected there. So that idea of giving back through social services and service and being a public servant and helping to leave things better than I found them, whether or not that's through music or through financial programming and supports. It's all just trying to kind of do my part.
Wow. And it's that truth and commitment and
absolutely. Yeah, just trying to serve.
Now, of course, you're director of Charlotte County Human Services, and I'm sure your agency is involved in so many different things.
Sure.
Can you give us just a sort of a broad overview of some of the amazing things that you
Yeah.
involved in?
A rundown. So we have 4 different divisions within the Human Services Department. So we have our Veteran Services Division, which are amazing and do benefits reviews and benefit connection and all kind of incredible stuff to serve our veterans and advocate for them and help connect them with the benefits that they deserve. We also have our Aging and Adults, which is an entire division that is dedicated to helping older folks, disabled folks, to get that sort of stability that they need. Oftentimes that can be some in-home care and things like that. So making sure that they're shored up. And then we have our neighborhood services, which is a little bit more complicated in the sense that that has a couple of large programs, affordable housing, and the housing division is located within that. But we also have our case management that we do for children and families, and our civil citation for kids that have kind of gotten on the wrong side of the law, helping them get back on the right side. But it's a lot of financial stability too, and so it's that intensive case management, helping people with self-sufficiency and resiliency, and a lot of coaching and support. But then we also have our intake division, and intake services is essentially a way in. Social services in general is just an incredibly complicated maze, and we know that. And we're only one part of that, right? We're just local government. The federal government has a whole other, side to it. And so for us, if we can assist with having kind of a front door, and that's really what our intake services is, and what they're looking to do is to provide some initial screening and assessment to determine the level of need that people have, to determine their level of vulnerability. How many people do we need to assign to this? What's the urgency? And how can we get you the fastest help possible? One of the coolest things that we get to do is that we get to work with community partners. We've got an incredible project that is going to be starting to come online here soon in the Family Services Center. And so we get the benefit of being able to have 2 buildings that will make up one large campus in Parkside that will have 14 different, nonprofits, local government, just community partners at the table to be able to work together and integrate and sort of holistically approach services for people. And we just could not be more excited to be able to get that off the ground. So we'll be moving actually in about 3 weeks. We'll have half of our department heading over there, and then when the second building's done, the other half will go over. So excited about that. But human services is such a broad term, but people usually, there's a problem when people need to come our way. Yeah. And so we're just there to help. We're there to listen. We're there to coach. We're there to give, financial assistance, whatever it is.
And how did you get involved in the human services field? Was it something you fell into, or was it?
Yeah, I was definitely drawn to it, but I started at the United Way in Charlotte County. I started as their volunteer coordinator, and then I became the resource development specialist and director, and then I became the executive director of the United Way, and then I came over and I did that for about 5 years, and then I came over and joined the county. And for me, it's just, helping people, and also being able to kind of have a big picture, kind of a systems approach, and use partners, and really just work together, working collaboratively. So I feel great about being able to have the nonprofit background and now be in the public sector, and it's exciting. It's good.
Great. And are there some misconceptions people have about human services?
Yes. I don't know that we have time for that, but yes, they do.
I
think people have the perception that when people come to us that they are not doing everything within their power to get their situation kind of righted. I think there's a perception that people are lazy. And the reality is that people are working as hard as they can to be able to make ends meet. And you got to make sure that you're real careful in how you can, you don't just want to paint everybody with a broad brush. And really what we have here in our community is a whole lot of people that are really hanging on with their fingernails and really trying to just make sure that they can kind of get through the week, get through the month. And so it's just a misperception and misconception that people have that that people aren't doing everything that they can.
Did the pandemic change the way you and your staff handle day-to-day operations?
100%.
100%.
100%. Yeah, we have everything that we do now is online. Mm-hmm. Certainly, we also provide in-person services, but we had to switch to entirely online. And what we did is we created a one application process. So people could come in, and that's when we created that front door. People could come in and they could fill out an application and just say, look, here's all the things that I need help with. Here's my situation. And then my staff on the back end could sort of match them to, grant or funding opportunities, really trying to remove barriers for clients. But one of the biggest barriers is people had to come to our office, or they had to call us and make an appointment. We had to meet them, or they had to, take off work, or now they can apply online and we can work at their convenience and their schedule. So that is a silver lining, to be sure. But yeah, I think the level of need in our community is, it is large, and yet at the same time, we may not always see it because of the amount of money that came out for CARES Act. So we kind of put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, but we're going to begin to see that need coming back with evictions and foreclosures and that sort of thing. So we all need to be paying attention to that and making sure that we're addressing the root of the issue. Yeah.
Have any success stories that surprised you in Charlotte County Human Services that something you weren't expecting that had
there's a ton of success stories.
Right.
I think for me, what surprises me all the time in our community is how amazingly flexible this community is in terms of the folks that are working in it. But we have to be flexible because we're an interesting county in terms of our size. We're a suburban county, which is not, so we're not rural, so we don't get, sort of any kind of, farming type of subsidy or anything that way. We're not urban. We're in this weird no man's land. Also, we're not an entitlement community, so we only have 185 or so thousand residents. So, we don't get automatic funding like some larger communities do. So we're in this interesting space, nestled between two larger counties and communities. Yeah. But because of that, I think we've had to be resourceful. We've had to get creative. Right. And I think for me, people's willingness to work together and to be creative surprises me all the time. But also the fact that we have a remarkably generous community. I think that they give back in terms of volunteering and donating and all kinds of things. This community steps up for people. That is always just, it's surprising and gratifying, and it's one of the reasons why I stayed. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit unusual for people to be born here and to be raised here and stay and raise their family here. It's a little bit unusual, but to me, that pull of this place and these people was just too much to ignore. So it's just a remarkable place. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. And as far as future trends, you mentioned more online access.
Sure.
Any other future trends in human services?
Yeah, we're going to have to pay attention to, obviously, affordable housing is an ongoing issue. And we're not unique in that. That's everywhere. But it's going to become a larger issue for us as inventory becomes harder and harder to get. It's already incredibly expensive right now. And we're in an interesting time with this I shouldn't say post-pandemic because we're absolutely 100% still in the pandemic. But this economic boom that we're experiencing, it is interesting. And we're sort of in a little bit of a wait and see, to see what happens with inflation, what happens with these workers that, as far as we can tell, a lot of the service industry workers that keep our economic engine going have left. So there's a connection there where people can't, they can't hire people, but people can't afford to move in here and work. So we're in this interesting time. We have a lot of retirees, a remarkable amount of retirees, which is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that at all. There's a wealth of experience and knowledge that comes to our community, but it doesn't make our workforce any bigger. We already have a particularly small workforce. We've got about a 42% participation rate in the workforce. The state of Florida average is about 61%. We're small.
Wow, yeah.
And so that's a lot for that little workforce to sort of carry, all of those folks that are demanding goods and services. So it's an interesting time. And so really for us, the urgency to build affordable housing, the urgency to make housing attainable and affordable is really sort of hitting this peak moment and peak time. The issue, though, is it takes a long time to put all of those things in place. So we're working, feverishly like ducks underwater there trying to get that done. We've got remarkable support from the Board of County Commissioners. They have made this a priority. They have said affordable housing is imperative for us. And so with that guidance and with them setting that leadership tone, we're really hopeful that we're going to be able to provide that for the community. Because that is something that is going to be interesting for us. Also seeing how this sort of new time of remote work and how that affects things. So when you already have a small workforce, but people can kind of maybe work here but live somewhere else, and how does that work? And do we want them to live here? And yes, we do. And sort of figuring all of that out. But we're just trying to learn, pay attention, just make sure that we're promoting stability wherever we can, and really just well-being for the community.
Absolutely. And last question I want to ask you is, you combined singing with your work as the Director of Human Services. Now, there might be a person out there who races cars but also wants to grow chinchillas or something.
Yes.
What would you say to this person, and how you can do more than one thing in your life, and how do you balance it, and how do you make it complementary and not antagonistic?
Well, to me, it's complementary if you're passionate about it, right? So whatever you're passionate about, you should do it. And that doesn't mean that, not everybody has the lucky sort of benefit of being able to have a job that they're passionate about. And I recognize that, and that's okay. Sometimes just having a job is just having a job. I get to have a job that I adore and that I am absolutely passionate about. But if you can't do that, make sure that you have stuff in your life that you are passionate about, and then having those hobbies and those outlets that get your creative juices going. I mean, I think we all saw during this pandemic where, there was nowhere to go. You were home, you were locked in with your family, you were, what were you going to do? And that's been so interesting to see people's sort of different stress coping mechanisms and how all of that, some people just only wanted to work. I had to fight them off, like, no, we're not back in yet, but I'm trying to beg them to take time off when it's time. They just want to work and work, because that passion, when you have that, people just they want to do it.
Too, and
it's absolutely
crisis,
routine.
Something that we know and that we feel
absolutely
safe with.
Absolutely. But I think for me and what I try and instill in my kids is find what you're passionate about and find how you can give back. And sometimes those are the same things, and sometimes they're not, and that's okay. But you need to do both.
And before we close out the interview, Carrie, would you like to show our viewing audience your CDs?
Sure. We've got, actually, I think we probably have 6 or 7 CDs, but this morning I grabbed a couple. Still Friends has a couple of CDs that we put together. But Steve Blackwell and Friends, he's got, I think he's got 4 that he was able to do before he died. And actually, this is great. There's a picture on the back of this one of him and Toch Brown. He actually has a fabulous mullet in that picture. So well done. They're back in. Yeah. See, it all comes back. but yeah, so these CDs are great, and they've just become even more precious, you know, over the years. And but yeah, we're around. You can hear our music, and Still Friends does have a website. But honestly, we're a hobby band. You know, we do this for
Sure,
fun,
absolutely.
but it does bring us joy, and I'm really grateful that you invited me here to
Oh,
talk
it's
a little bit about
my
it.
pleasure. Thank you, Carrie Walsh, for being our guest on Center
was
Stage
great.
Charlotte County. And join us next month when we'll have another exciting guest. Thank you.